The HOA's decision to drain the natural spring on my property had been swift and ruthless. As I stood there, my heart raged against the audacity of Victoria Reed, the new HOA president, who claimed my family's 100-year-old spring was a flood hazard. My wife, Sarah, slammed the official notice on the table, her brow knit in disbelief. "They can't take your water," she proclaimed. Yet they could, and they would unless I fought back. Determined, I gathered my courage and attended the emergency HOA meeting, armed with photographs of the spring throughout the seasons and a petition signed by neighbors who cherished it. My pleas fell on deaf ears as Victoria, wearing an air of superiority, declared the spring an eyesore and a risk. It was not just about property values or aesthetics. It was about power, and she aimed to consolidate hers at any cost. Days turned into sleepless nights as I uncovered the depths of Victoria's ambition. I discovered whispers of her scheme to buy out property owners as their values plummeted. Fueled by rage, I created a website with my findings, exposing her corruption to all of Cascade Heights. The tide began to shift in my favor, with neighbors who once stood by her side now questioning her motives. But then, threats emerged. A menacing call warned me to halt my pursuits or face dire consequences. The night grew sinister when I caught workers dismantling my spring under the moonlight. Victoria stood behind them, clipboard in hand, smirking as they chewed through the roots of my family's legacy. I confronted them only to be met with the familiar coldness of Victoria. "We're fixing a safety hazard," she sneered. As the spring dried up, my heart sank alongside the water levels. Soon, I watched as floodwaters rose in the homes around me, impacting even those who had supported Victoria's decision. I reached out to lawyers, but funds were tight, and I was running out of options until I uncovered shocking revelations at the county records office. Victoria's geological survey had been conducted by her brother-in-law, a man with a history of corrupt practices. Armed with this knowledge, I challenged the HOA's legality, only to be summarily dismissed. It became clear this was a war, and I was prepared for battle. As basements flooded and neighbors panicked, I went public. The local news picked up the story. Citizens began to remember the historical significance of the spring, and their support grew. With each new revelation, Victoria's grip weakened, and I unleashed evidence of her schemes to the public, pushing her further away from the helm of our community. But Victoria would not go down easily. The damage caused by her greed was irreversible for many families, and a sense of guilt hung heavily over my shoulders. Still, my resolve strengthened as I watched the community unite against her deceit. Every new voice that stood against her brought us closer to transformation. The grassroots movement escalated, and with the support of residents like Martha, who I reluctantly enlisted, we built an undeniable case against the HOA. It became personal when I discovered that the flood was not just a byproduct of the spring's destruction, but a calculated part of Victoria's plan. Her brother-in-law's drainage company was set to profit from a disaster he helped create, as my evidence mounted. So did my determination to expose her before it was too late. The final showdown occurred in the courtroom, where Victoria faced charges of fraud, conspiracy, and environmental destruction. Despite her attempts to turn the blame on me, the weight of evidence pointed squarely at her. Her facade cracked as the truth unraveled, revealing a network of corruption that reached deep into the heart of Cascade Heights. The investigation's culmination revealed her greed in staggering detail, leading to her swift conviction. As she was led away in handcuffs, the burden lifted. I knew the fight wasn't over. The repercussions of her actions were still unfolding. But for every destroyed basement and lost trust, the community began to heal. We took ownership of our future, paving the way for sustainable practices and environmental awareness, cherishing the spring that Victoria had tried to eliminate. The spring flowed again, stronger than ever. It was no longer just a feature of the neighborhood. It had become a pillar of community identity, symbolizing resilience. Martha's transformation into a leader who actively engaged in bettering our neighborhood inspired many. As the seasons passed, the scars of the struggle faded, replaced by a collective commitment to nurturing the environment. Each droplet of water that trickled down the path I used to skip rocks upon carried with it a lesson learned. The community gathered for the annual festival at the spring, celebrating not just nature's beauty, but the journey that had brought us together. We had reclaimed our homes and hearts, proving that unity and respect for nature could forge a lasting legacy. Though Victoria's shadow loomed initially large, the spring whispered stories of prosperity and new beginnings, a reminder that even in the face of greed and corruption, hope could flow freely, just like the water once more sustaining our home.